11 November 2023 off-cycle elections. This is delivered today in Abuja on Monday, 13th November 2023. 1. Introduction. The CDD Election Analysis Center is pleased to welcome ladies and gentlemen of the press to this final press briefing by the EAC on its key findings on the conduct of the November 11, 2023 off-cycle elections in Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi states. What follows is a summary of the key findings of the EAC, which would also be published as a final report on the website of the organization. The statement is set in the broader context of the economic, political, and socio-cultural environment, which not only frames but continues to pose challenges for the country's competitive party and electoral politics. Major features of this environment are sanitizing the country's electoral process. Based on its findings, the EAC's major message is the following. There is a need to separate the unpredictable technical failures that are due to the operational, logistical, and infrastructural challenges of electoral administration in the country on the one hand, from the politically instigated failures attributable in the main to deliberate manipulation by candidates, political parties, and their proxies in state and society on the other hand. The challenge, therefore, is how to unscramble the nexus connecting technical to politically motivated failures with a view to enhancing the integrity of elections in the country. In what follows, we summarize our major findings on the 5 features of framing the environment of democratic politics in the country. The first is incumbency. The abuse of power of incumbency for unfair partisan political electoral advantage by the governing parties in the 3 states is a major factor posing challenge to the conduct of election in the country. The abuse of incumbency takes any or all of the following forms: unequal access of opposition parties to state electronic media, the deployment of state resources such as official state vehicles and staff for electioneering campaigns, and the mobilization of voting banks by parties in power in the 3 states, and the denial of the display of billboards, the denial of access to campaign facilities and public spaces by opposition parties to convey their messages to the electorate by single authorities. These remain major fetters on the conduct of the 3 off-cycle elections that satisfy the conditions for electoral integrity. But the abuse of power of incumbency was also deployed to distort the party primary process of the governing parties in 2 of the 3 states, Bayelsa and Imo, where the incumbent governors sought re-election for a final second term, and in the 3rd state, Kogi, where the incumbent governor, unable to seek re-election because he was serving out his final non-renewable second term, used the full panoply of state power and resources to ensure the victory of his preferred candidate during the ruling party primary elections. The impact of the abuse of the power of incumbency, so illustrated, created an unfair level playing ground that greatly diminished the credibility of the off-cycle elections in the 3 states. Identity. The politics of identity featured in the off-cycle elections in the 3 states in nomination process for the governorship candidates of the political parties. Identity as a factor in the elections assumed different forms. In one sense, identity assumed the form of the ethnic configuration in the 3 states. In Kogi State, for example, while the retiring incumbent governor ensured not only that the ruling party nominated a candidate from his ethnic group in the state, the other major parties chose candidates from other ethnic groups, hoping to cash in on the claim that the next governor must come from their own ethnic group. Another form of identity played out was a geographical or zonal identity. In Bayelsa State, for example, the APC campaigned on the claim that the eastern zone of the state should produce to the next governor. In Imo State, the PDP based its campaign on the governorship returning to the Owerri zone on equity grounds, while LP staked a claim for the Okigwe zone. This particular form of identity politics as geographical identity or zoning draws on the federal character clauses of Nigeria's 1999 constitution. Another version of the identity politics is the gender consideration that influenced the choice of female deputy governorship candidates by the APC candidate for governorship in Imo State and the PDP in Kogi State. The challenge of identity politics when it is used to mobilize political support is the tendency for it to descend into ethnic profiling, ethnic hate speech, and the tendency for the political mobilization of ethnicity to descend into violent ethno-political conflict. Inducement. The inducement of voters, especially in the form of vote buying and vote selling, featured during the 11 November 2023 off-cycle elections. Our observers reported incidents of inducement of voters in Bayelsa State, where in some polling units in the southern Ijaw LGA, wrappers and rice were allegedly distributed to voters in addition to monetary inducement. Imo State, where party agents allegedly offered voters cash incentives, and more worryingly, where INEC outdoor staff allegedly received money from party agents in polling unit 7, Ehime Mbano LGA, and Kogi State, where the LGA chairman of Igalamela Odudu was arrested with wads of cash and bullets on his person. Information disorder. Reported cases of the spread of disinformation during off-cycle elections in the 3 states included the false news that the governorship candidate of the PDP in Imo State, Sam Anyanwu, had voluntarily withdrawn from the elections, and that of the SDP governorship candidate in Kogi State, Murtala Ajaka, who had been disqualified from contesting the election in Kogi State. Insecurity. The elections in the 3 states were conducted against a history of political conflict occasioned by cultism, insurgencies, and separatist agitations. Against this background, the prospects of insecurity were a major source of concern before and during the elections. The elections witnessed the following incidents of violence: A. An alleged ballot snatcher being shot and killed in Dekina LGA in Kogi State. B. Another person was shot dead in Pangbe community in Yenugwa LGA, Bayelsa. And C. A violent altercation in the collation center in Kogi, where a group of other party agents pounced upon and violently attacked another party agent who was complaining about the conduct of the elections in the state. Institutions. Key institutions that played an important role in the conduct and outcome of the elections were INEC, the security agency, the executive branch of government, the judiciary, the political parties, and the media. Despite its preparation for the elections, INEC experienced A. delays in the timely commencement of elections in the 3 states, B. malfunctioning in the use of beavers for accreditation, and C. problem with the pre-filled election result sheets in Ogorimagogo LGA in Kogi, and the upload of wrong or undeclared results on the IREG, also in some polling units in Kogi State. Although these glitches may not have been widespread or deliberate, they remain concerns with which INEC needs to seriously find solutions to. The security agencies appear to have secured the electoral process on election day. The role of political parties remains a major cog in the conduct of free and fair elections in this country. Their failure to manage inter-party and intra-party disputes amicably and democratically is a major factor that generates violent electoral conflicts with ripple effects on the politically generated failures of the electoral process, referred to in the introduction to this statement. It nurtures and sustains the general impunity that now characterizes and defines electoral and voting behavior in the country. It remains the gravest threat to electoral democracy in the country, as exemplified in the impunity that drives the gross abuse of power of incumbency for partisan party political electoral advantage, including the erosion of the independence of such democratic promoting institutions as the EFCC, the ICPC, and the separation of powers between the executive, legislature, and judiciary. Conclusion. The upshot of EAC's observations on the central role of institutions in the broader context of the electoral history of Nigeria since 1999, which the conduct and outcome of the off-cycle elections in Bayelsa, Kogi, and Imo states more or less mirror, is to focus more seriously on the urgent need to reform our political parties in ways that we see them play a more responsible role as the sentinel, not a problem, for electoral democracy in our country. Thank you very much.
Emphasizing electoral reform. But if you don't do political reform, then you can't get anywhere. Even if you have 5 years, one term of 5 years, the problem is not that you have 2 terms or 1 term. It is that the political parties are behaving in a manner that shows that they are deliberately trying to scuttle democracy in this country. And I think the mass media is also encouraging them by giving them the platform to speak. I see governors talking 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes in a way that shows raises concerns about us. So what is important is that we look at those elements of the political environment which continue to pose serious challenges to the conduct of democracy in this country. The political parties themselves are not mirror of what democracy should be. And they are the ones who, of course, by constitution, by any arrangement, will form governments. So I think the point is that for Nigerians to start making it clear to the political parties that they are the problem. But we keep to encourage them by diverting attention from what they are not doing right to looking at problems or failures in other institutions of society. And they are doing all their best to delegitimize the electoral process in this country. Every time you make reform, they find a way of going around it to subvert what reform has been made. And we keep back going every cycle. We go every cycle of the National Assembly, spending 4 years trying to amend the Electoral Act. Nigeria is the only country where I know from one election to the other, you keep trying to amend the Constitution, the Electoral Act. And that process goes on for 4 years, almost to the eve of the elections. That is the problem. That is the problem. We've given them too much of a free rein. So I think the message we are given, and that is the last sentence in that statement, is that we must address the issue of political reform, mainly party reform, before we can even move. If you have a single term, the same problems will arise over who wins the elections, over who is going to succeed me. The problem is not that. Is basically the attitude people who are not Democrats driving the Democrat in this country. Jonathan was in power for 6 years. He had a national conference that was put in place. Nothing was done. Why was nothing done? Because elements in the political process did not want that to happen. 2007, 2008, the US electoral reform said, look, let all petitions be concluded before people are sworn in. Not only governors and presidents, but even members of the National Assembly and State House of Assembly. 2008, nothing has been done. We are now saying, let us go back to that. So that is the issue. That is the issue. 2008, Yar'Adua was prepared to undertake the reform suggested by the ERC. Some politicians went back to him, Oga, if you do what they're asking you to do, you are giving up all your powers. So nothing was done. Jonathan came in. He did nothing about, okay, this thing people have said, let all elections, petitions be settled before. He did nothing about it. Now, with the help of hindsight, he's saying, off-cycle elections are a problem. So that is the message we are trying to give, that, look, we must confront the politicians and take the initiative out of their hands. We must deliver ourselves from them to save the country. The question was asked of our colleague here. Look, this is not a matter of minuses or plus. Minus or plus. We're looking at the entire process and see what is the problem. Whether it's, you see, I mean, when I grade students sometimes, I read the paper, I grade the student A today. If I read it tomorrow, I'm giving B minus. So all this question about rate, the percentage, I mean, these are just occasions. The problem is that when all is said and done, what is the image? We have given our verdict. Our last statement, that's our verdict.
So the verdict is that we are not making progress in our electoral system?
Yeah, we are not making progress. We are in fact going backwards. We are going backwards. But we have made progress. In fact, see, the beauty of democracy is that the more progress you make, the more attempts are made by those who don't want you to go further to take you back. That is what they have taken us back, because they see the progress we are making is undermining them if we push it through. And they're never trying to reverse it. The introduction of technology was meant to sanitize the process to some extent. But between 2019 and they now saw, how can we subvert this process that is taking power from us? And they therefore started it. So we must not allow them to push us backwards. We must fight to keep on pushing the struggle. So it's not a question of whether we are making progress or we are not making progress. It is the progress we have made is now being the cause of why they do not want us to move further. And in doing so, they also want us to move back because it is to their advantage.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Sorry.
I spoke off record.